여러분 안녕하십니까? 잠시 안내 말씀 드리겠습니다. 곧 오후 3시부터 2021
The Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change 2021 will begin at 3 p.m. Korea time. Simultaneous interpreting is provided throughout the forum. Please select the language of your choice to listen to the interpretation. Let us assure you that the forum follows the COVID-19 protocol.
May I have your attention, please? The opening ceremony and the high-level plenary session of Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change 2021 will commence in a few minutes, starting at 3 p.m. on the dot, Korea Standard Time. So please tune in and please stay with us. For our multinational audience, we are providing simultaneous interpretation service today, so please check your language option online. And finally, please note that we are following COVID-19 related safety measures in a stringent manner. So once again, the opening ceremony and the high-level plenary session of Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change 2021 will begin shortly, starting at 3 p.m. on the dot, Korea Standard Time, so please stay tuned. Thank you. Well, an impressive video clip officially commenced Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change 2021, which clearly demonstrated the purpose and direction of this forum. So without further ado, let us begin Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change 2021 in earnest. Well, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us online today. Well, my name is Hemi Kim, and I'm going to be your MC for Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change 2021. Well, it's indeed my great honor and pleasure to be part of such a wonderful event, and it's very nice to meet you all both online and offline. Thank you so much for joining us. And on behalf of our hosts, I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation and welcome to all of you for taking the time to participate in this forum, both online and offline, despite your busy schedule. And as you all know, Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change was launched in 2016, and this year we are celebrating its 4th anniversary. And it's designed to find and share new ways to take the lead in coping with the climate crisis and overcoming the challenges posed by COVID-19. And this year, representatives from 15 cities are taking part in our 2-day event, starting from today, and it will last until tomorrow. And they are here to discuss the roles and action plans of cities and local governments under the theme of carbon neutrality to overcome climate emergency. So without further ado, let us commence Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change 2021 in earnest. First of all, it is my great joy and privilege to introduce His Excellency, Mr. Gino Van Begin, Secretary General of ICLEI, Local Government for Sustainability, who will virtually deliver his opening speech. And as you all know, Secretary General Gino Van Begin has been working for ICLEI for 20 years, and he has consistently strived to ensure that ICLEI performs as a responsible, forward-looking, not-for-profit local and regional government organization serving its members worldwide. So without further ado, let us virtually meet Mr. Gino Van Begin. Good morning, Mr. Secretary General. Could you please give us your opening speech?
Thank you very much, Madam. Greetings to Seoul, Honorable Mayor all, fellow mayors, governors, deputies, councillors, experts and practitioners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. According to the latest report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which appeared in August this year, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere is higher than it has ever been in the last 2 million years. The IPCC is explicit that the unprecedented rate of global warming is induced by human activity, and that the global surface temperature will continue to increase until at least the mid-century, irrespective of the emission scenarios considered. Global warming will exceed the 1.5 Celsius degrees, if not 2 degrees Celsius, rise in average temperature during the 21st century, unless drastic reductions in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions occur in the coming decades. To limit this human-induced global warming, we must urgently and radically decarbonize our economies and societies to reach climate neutrality, in particular net zero CO2 emissions, along with strong reductions in all other greenhouse gas emissions. Here, leaders of government at all levels, be it cities, towns, prefectures, regions, or nations, must undertake collaborative action together with industry and the broader civil society. So what must be done concretely? First, all governments should declare the climate emergency, similar to declaring a pandemic such as a COVID-19 pandemic, at the local, regional, and even national level. As of today, more than 2,000 jurisdictions worldwide have already taken this first decisive step. Here, the Korean local governments and cities made an impact on the global stage last year when the 226 Korean local governments jointly declared the climate emergency, with at least 100 of them also committing to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. The Korean government also took this important step and demonstrated the power of national and local governments jointly raising climate ambition as a win-win for both local, national, and global context. The second step is for national governments and the international community to set up the enabling frameworks for local and regional governments to act within. They should encourage and support innovation, design and implement the overall national decarbonizing policies, promote new and best technologies available, and stimulate personal behavior change towards a 1.5 degrees lifestyle. The third step is that we all strive to increase the resilience of human life and our built environment, that we stop the degradation of our nature and biodiversity, and that we achieve a global and fair understanding that all of these crises are inherently connected with each other. Ladies and gentlemen, let us be clear. We know beyond all doubt the steps that must be taken, and we know that time is of the essence. Soon, 2/3 of the world's population will live in urban areas. Urban areas are at the center of economic activity, of development, of revenue creation, of governance, but also of global pollution. The responsibility on local leaders is thus immense. There is no way we can limit global warming to the 1.5 degrees Celsius if local leaders do not act now. The ICLEI network stands for achieving a resilient, net zero emission, climate neutral future. We align with science in that it is essential to achieve climate neutrality in all governmental operations and in our communities at the latest by mid-century, and to halve our emissions by 2030. At ICLEI, we work closely with our members to help to set up such midterm targets for 2030. We part in the UN Race to Zero and the UN Race to Resilience, the latter to which we even provide our time and resources. Our ICLEI Green Climate Cities program, our ICLEI Climate Neutrality Framework and Reporting System, our initiatives on food and circularity, and our Cities with Nature program can guide subnational governments to act on the climate emergency. At the global climate processes and negotiations under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC, ICLEI acts as the global focal point for local and regional governments since 1995. We coordinate the subnational inputs to the negotiations and exchanges. We establish relations with the UNFCCC Secretariat and the parties, and we support the organization of key events such as the Local and Regional Leaders Summit and pavilions at the COP locations. Next week, the COP26 in Glasgow will kick off the second phase under the Paris Agreement. COP26 can only be meaningful and successful if each and every nation brings new, ambitious national plans and targets to achieve carbon neutrality and the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. We at ICLEI monitor and demand that these national plans engage the local and regional governments in the design and implementation of the national NDCs. Dear participants, the only way forward is to urgently and collectively reverse this dangerous trend in global warming. We must drastically reorient the economic and social patterns of our daily lives. We must redesign our built environment. We must align ourselves again with nature and restore the natural systems in and around our cities, towns, and regions. At this Seoul Mayors Forum, which is linked to the ICLEI Daring Cities Forum 2021, we will discuss and demonstrate visionary leadership. We will share our knowledge actively, speak openly, and with a united voice. I am looking forward to our discussions and learnings of today and tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Well, His Excellency, Mr. Juno van Begin, Secretary General of ICLEI, Local Government for Sustainability, has just delivered an excellent speech to extend his warm welcome and gratitude to all participants. Well, thank you very much for your insightful speech, Mr. Secretary General. Well, next, I'm very pleased and honored to announce that His Excellency, Mr. Oh Se-hoon, Mayor of Seoul Metropolitan City, will virtually deliver his welcoming remarks. So, without further ado, let's take a look.
반갑습니다.
Good
서울특별시장
afternoon. I'm Oh Se-hoon, Mayor of Seoul. Thank you, mayors and leaders of international organizations, for joining us at the Seoul Mayors Forum on Climate Change 2021. Citizens of Seoul, thank you for joining us virtually. Welcome all to the forum. Humanity is now facing a climate crisis, not climate change. Climate change has now become an existential threat, making the transition to net zero not a choice, but a must. In particular, as cities account over 70% of greenhouse gas emissions, they must be the solution and take decisive actions to respond to climate change. To this end, the Seoul Metropolitan Government is taking multifaceted efforts to take the lead in reducing greenhouse gas emissions across the building, transport, and waste management sectors that contribute to about 94% of the emissions and speed up the shift to new and renewable energy to achieve net zero by 2050. The Seoul Metropolitan Government also engages with global cities during the Mayors Forum to share climate action success stories through a number of city networks such as C40, ICLEI, and GCOM. I hope that today's forum, which brings together city leaders, serves as an opportunity to discuss the role of cities in tackling the climate crisis and taking another great leap forward to a sustainable future. Thank you very much.
His Excellency Mr. Oh Se-hoon, Mayor of Seoul Metropolitan City, gave us an outstanding welcome speech to express his heartfelt appreciation to all attendees who are joining us online and offline today. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, once again for your wonderful speech. Well, as you all know, the COP26 UN Climate Change Conference hosted by the UK in partnership with Italy will commence in Glasgow next week. So in light of this, His Excellency, Mr. Nick Mehta, Deputy British Ambassador to the Republic of Korea, will give us a brief introduction of COP26, highlighting the important role cities can play. So without further ado, let us meet him online. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. Mayors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends joining us online, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak to you today. This Sunday, over 130 heads of state will gather in Glasgow for the COP26 World Leaders Summit. 6 years ago in Paris, world leaders provided us with consensus, ambition, and hope that they would strive to limit temperature below 2 degrees Celsius and make efforts towards capping rises to 1.5 degrees. At COP26, we must honour the promises made in Paris. The success and failure of COP26 is in the hands of the world's leaders, and so is the fate of the Paris Agreement. For the UK, this must be the COP, which firstly keeps 1.5 degrees within reach, putting the planet on a path towards driving down emissions from mid-century net zero commitments and ambitious 2030 emissions reduction targets. Secondly, demonstrates unequivocally that all nations are committed to protecting people and nature from the impact of climate change. Thirdly, it gets finance flowing to enable climate action to happen. And fourthly, it ensures that the negotiations are a success and that agreement is reached on the robust rules required to underpin the Paris Agreement. Achieving success across all of these objectives will require a collective effort from the actions of governments, businesses, investors, civil society, indigenous people and young people. But the leadership of cities and local government is particularly important. In the UK, we estimate that as much as 82% of all emissions are within the scope and influence of cities and local government. Such is the importance of city leadership that the final day of the forthcoming COP is entirely focused on cities and the built environment. And that is why today I pay tribute to ICLEI Secretary General Gino van Bergen and ICLEI Korea Executive Director Yoon-hee Park for their partnership in driving ambition on the UN campaign Race to Zero. Race to Zero is a critical pillar of our COP26 programme and now includes 733 cities globally and seeks to bring the city's leadership together to realise the goal of the Paris Agreement. And it's also why I want to pay tribute to the many mayors that are joining us today from cities across the world and Korea, who have committed themselves to leading the global race to net zero emissions by, and in many cases earlier than 2050. At a macro level, the transition to a low-carbon economy has rightly been labelled the greatest economic growth opportunity of the 21st century. The opportunity is vast for local leaders and the communities they represent to embrace the transition. We see the shift to renewable energy and the growth in the global fleet of zero-emission vehicles as the fundamental shifts across our economies. From the polluting technologies of the 20th century to the clean technologies of the 21st century. From the reliance, in Korea's case, of imported and rightly now exceptionally expensive fossil fuels to improved energy security provided by the local capture of cheap, abundant solar and wind power. And from a heavily centralised power system to a new structure in which energy generation and storage is increasingly decentralised, with solar and batteries being deployed in buildings, vehicles and local communities. In response to these shifts, last week the United Kingdom launched its new strategy for delivering the Paris Agreement, Net Zero, Build Back Greener. In the strategy, we recognise the critical role that local governments play in delivering action on climate change. And I want to recommend this strategy to those of you who are listening online for 3 reasons. Firstly, to emphasise that moving to a net zero economy presents fantastic opportunities for towns and cities. In the UK, our plans for delivering net zero 2050 go hand in hand with the Prime Minister's Levelling Up agenda, which seeks to ensure equitable growth across the United Kingdom. One example of this is in Manchester, where the government has given more than £1 billion to transform the region's transport system. Secondly, I want to highlight that the UK recognises that integrating the critical net zero activity in areas such as energy, efficiency, heating and retrofits go hand in hand. And thirdly and finally, the strategy sets out how the United Kingdom will respond to the change which is required to deliver net zero and how it will coordinate engagement with local authorities. In the UK, we have already developed a carbon literacy toolkit for the delivery of training for local authorities, and we will intensify efforts to roll this out. In concluding, I want to acknowledge the efforts of the mayor of the city of Seoul to spur the transition to a net zero economy and to galvanise local leadership from across Korea behind what the world must achieve in Glasgow next week. The UK is committed to driving positive action globally, and I hope post COP26 and as we advance our mutual efforts to live with COVID, that there will be further opportunities to build city-to-city cooperation between the UK and Korea, critical to advancing our shared goals. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Well, His Excellency, Mr. Nick Mehta, Deputy British Ambassador to the Republic of Korea, enlightened us regarding the upcoming COP26 and the significant role cities can play. So thank you very much, Your Excellency, once again. So ladies and gentlemen, please give him a big round of applause. Thank you so much. We sincerely appreciate it. And last but not least, the Honorable Mr. Gonzalo Munoz, who is serving as a high-level champion of Chile for the UNFCCC's Race to Zero campaign, will virtually give us a brief introduction of this important campaign. So, without further ado, let's take a look.
Honorable mayors, governors, deputies, councillors, experts and practitioners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start, of course, by thanking ICLEI team, not only for this event, but for the amazing and fundamental work they're doing in the fight towards climate change. We all know the science is absolutely clear. Time is running out and the risks associated with climate change are absolutely existential. To have a chance of a stable planet for future generations, we must cut greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030 and then continue to have them every decade for a decarbonized global economy by mid-century. We have less than 30 years. This is even more evident from the Code Red, the latest report released by the IPCC a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, science is also telling us that we are not yet on the right track. And indeed, we will have to change course in an accelerated manner to avoid the worst of the climate crisis. On the other hand, the good news is that the transition to sustainability is definitely accelerating. We see a growing number of net zero commitment by many non-state and subnational actors responsible for all sectors of the economy, all scales of governance, all regions of the world. And the Race to Zero campaign has now become the golden standard of what it means to make a credible commitment. Race to Zero, or The Race to Zero, is a global campaign supported by the United Nations, bringing together the leadership and support of businesses, cities, regions, and investors for a healthy, resilient, carbon-free recovery, one that prevents future threats, creates decent jobs, and fosters sustainable growth. All members are all committed to the same overarching goal, halving emissions by 2030 and achieving net zero emissions by 2050 at the very latest, across the board, quickly and fairly, in line with the Paris Agreement and with the transparent action plans and robust near-term targets. Its sister campaign, Race to Resilience, is catalyzing a radical shift in global climate resilience ambition, putting people and nature first in the quest for a resilient world where we not only survive climate shocks and stresses, but thrive in spite of them. With these two sibling campaigns, we aim to drive change ahead of COP26. This will send a strong signal to governments that businesses, cities, regions, and investors are all united to meet the Paris goals and create a more inclusive and resilient decarbonized economy. So to join the campaigns, all entities must meet minimum criteria behind what we call the 4 Ps: pledge, plan, proceed, and publish. C40, the Global Governance of Mayors for Climate and Energy, ICLEI, and the Under2 Coalition serve as the partners in Cities Race to Zero for states, regions, and cities to join the campaign. Race to Zero is now including more than 6,200 members from 110 countries, including nearly 4,500 companies, 800 cities, 35 regions, 731 educational institutions, 45 health institutions representing more than 3,000 hospitals, 250 financial institutions already representing more than $90 trillion in net zero commitments. Only in the last year alone, Race to Zero has experienced dramatic growth, 190% across all stakeholder types despite the pandemic. Regions have increased by 60%, including now 6 from Latin America. Cities have increased by 77%, also with the pride of knowing that we brought many of them from Latin America. So subnational governments currently in the race to zero represent 11% of the world's population. In the last 3 months alone, cities and regions representing nearly 100 million people have joined the campaign. And their baseline emissions cover at least 10% of global CO2 emissions. The combined carbon footprint of these subnational governments is larger than that of India. But although the numbers look really good, encouraging, it's a sign of hope, they are certainly not enough. So I not only invite you, I urge you to commit by joining the race, a race that is just starting. We call Glasgow, the COP26, as the entry point to the race. This is a race where in the end, if done properly and with the correct ambition, we all win. Thank you very much.
Well, the Honorable Mr. Gonzalo Munoz, who is serving as a high-level champion of Chile for the UNFCCC's Race to Zero campaign, gave us a great and succinct introduction of this significant campaign titled Race to Zero. Well, thank you so much once again, Mr. Munoz Gonzalez. We really appreciate it. Well, now it's time to start the long-awaited high-level plenary session of Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change 2021, which will be moderated by none other than His Excellency Mr. Gino Van Begin, the Secretary General of ICLEI, Local Government for Sustainability. So now let me hand over the microphone to our distinguished moderator. Mr. Secretary General, could you please take it away?
Thank you very much, Madam. And indeed, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you now and to the audience 4 excellent speakers that we will discuss a little bit now in the next half an hour or something around the issues of the urgency to act on climate change, the urgency to achieve climate neutrality. The UN champion, Mr. Gonzalo Munoz, just gave us again a very clear picture of what is needed, but also what is going on currently and in preparation of the COP26, in particular with regard to the Race to Zero campaign, a global campaign that brings together cities, regions, businesses, and investors, all aligned around achieving and setting and planning for robust targets in the future. So I'm delighted to have here with us today 4 excellent speakers. First of all, Mrs. Young-hee Park, the Executive Director of ICLEI Korea and my dear colleague, and good afternoon to you, Young-hee. We will also hear from Mr. Lee Ye-jun, the Mayor of Goyan in Korea. We will hear from the Mayor of Riga in Latvia, Mr. Martins Sarkis. And we will hear from Councillor Robert Koch and the Lord Mayor of Sydney, Mr. Glover Moore, in a minute. Let me start by turning first of all to Mrs. Park, Executive Director of ICLEI Korea. And Mrs. Park, may I just ask you to describe a little bit of the excitement also that is ongoing amongst our Korean local government members of ICLEI, but also in general in your country. Last year, the local governments in Korea have all demonstrated their strong support to act on the climate crisis and had declared the climate emergency. So could you just tell us a little bit more of how are local governments in your country taking on the activities, the work that needs to be done on the ground to protect us for further global warming? Please, Mrs. Park.
예, 안녕하십니까. 저는 이클레이 한국사무소의 박연희 소장입니다.
My name is
청중들이
Park
많이
Yeon-hee. I'm director
있으니까
of
저
ICLEI
한국말로
Korea
발표하도록
office.
하겠습니다.
Since we are
제가
joined by many
여러분들께
Koreans,
발표할
I'll speak in
내용은
Korean.
한국의 지방
The topic
정부들이
of my presentation is
어떻게
GCOM and
글로벌
cities race to
이니셔티브와
zero in
연계해서
Korea.
우리 지방
So I would like to
지역에서
talk
기후
specifically
행동을
about what we are
이어가고
doing in
있는지에
Korea,
대한 내용을
which is
간략하게
aligned with
말씀드리겠습니다.
GCOM
주로는
and cities race to zero campaign.
GCOM이라고
So
불리는
as I
글로벌
said,
기후 에너지
we'll
시장 협약,
focus on
그리고 이클레이
GCOM,
활동을
the
연계해서
Global
간략하게
Covenant of Neighbors for
말씀드리겠습니다.
Climate
자,
Energy
슬라이드를
and the
보여주시기
Race to
바랍니다.
Zero campaign.
여러분들께서 잘
Can you
아시는
please
것처럼
share my
이클레이는
slide?
지속
As you
가능한
know,
도시 만들기에
ICLEI
적극적인 지방
stands for
정부들이 참여하는
Local
세계의
Governments for
네트워크입니다.
Sustainability. It
그래서 전
is
세계적으로
a global city network. As you can see from the slide, we have 200 and plus local governments with ICLEI, and ICLEI has more than 20 offices globally, and the Korea office of ICLEI works closely with the local governments here in Korea. Can you please yes, move on to the next slide? If you look at slide 3, can you please move on to the next slide? Yes. So how can we achieve a sustainable city? ICLEI sets plans and works with local governments. Can you please move on to the next slide? As you can see here, we take 5 different approaches to continue on our efforts to make our cities sustainable. And phase 1 would be to achieve net zero. At the previous slide. So we help local governments make cities sustainable. You're going too fast. So as Mr. Gino Van Begin mentioned, can you please go back to the previous slide? Yes, so as I said, ICLEI works and supports the local governments in Korea. Can you please go back one slide? And the Korean local governments worked with global cities to act against climate emergency. And it is to that end that the local governments joined GCOM in Korea. GCOM stands for Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. So if you go to the next slide. Yes, the next slide. Yes, the next one, please. As I said, GCOM stands for Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, and this is the climate emergency declaration that 226 local governments in Korea made in celebration of the World Environment Day of 2020. So you see a photo of that declaration day. And moving on to the next slide. Yes, maybe one more slide. It was a landmark event in Korea because there was not once in Korea's history that the local governments joined forces to declare climate emergency and climate action. So this was a new in Korea. So with this, not only the local governments, but the National Assembly, as well as the municipal governments, decided to act on climate emergency. So can you go to the slide with the timeline? So there is this timeline of the bottom-up process of net zero target of the Republic of Korea. It first started with the local government's declaration on climate emergency. Then this was translated into the launch of Korean Association of Local Governments for Carbon Neutral Actions. And in celebration of the P4G summit, which was held in Korea in May, all local governments in Korea committed to net zero by 2050. And the UN unveiled its Race to Zero campaign and urged the local governments to embark on this journey. And Mr. Kim Hong-jang, mayor of Dangjin City and member of the UNFCCC, urged the other local governments to join hands. So what we did was a relay campaign. So one city participates not only in GCOM but also in Race to Zero campaign. And what the cities will do is they will appoint 2 following cities to follow suit. So that is the outline of the relay campaign in Korea. This was kicked off in Dangjin. And the 2 relaying cities were Jeollanam-do and Hwaseong, which appointed 2 following cities, so leading to Yeosu, Changwon, Gwangmyeong, Goyang, and that multiplies to 8. Gangdong, Gwangju, Eunpyeong, and so on. As you can see from the slide, we are seeing a larger number of cities and local governments embarking on this journey. Can you please go back 1 slide? Yes. 1 back. Yes. So the local governments in Korea are engaged with GCOM. Can you please go back 1 slide? Go forth 1 slide. Yes, please go forth, move 1 slide. I apologize for not being able to control the slides. Yes. Now, 21 local governments joined GCOM and the Race to Zero campaign. And so 21 GCOM cities and provincial governments, 20 Race to Zero cities and provincial governments, and 18 that are engaged in both GCOM and Race to Zero. And 16 have already completed their reporting on the CDP ICLE Unified Reporting System. And the reason why we wanted to stay aligned with GCOM and Race to Zero campaign was this. So Race to Zero and GCOM is so much more than just declaration of the commitment. These 2 initiatives require the local governments to report on their progress. And that is the precondition of the membership. So, of course, Korea declared its net zero vision by 2015. However, we do not have a specific framework that will verify whether Korea is on track or not. So Race to Zero and GCOM will require the local governments in Korea to fulfill their commitment and to report on their progress on a regular basis. And this not only applies to the Korean cities and local governments, but also other global cities and local governments. And that is the action we are taking. The reason why I'm saying this is because leaders of the local governments in Korea, some of them, have strong commitment to achieving net zero. So working with them is critical, and they also work in collaboration with many different organizations. We are ambitious about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. However, being on track is not easy, and taking responsibility is no easy feat, which is why we want to promote this campaign to a wider audience and to share what the local governments are doing to really give them the much needed momentum to move forward. And without this political commitment, net zero cannot be achieved, which is why Korea wants to stay aligned with Race to Zero and GCOM. Now, this is the last slide. We are faced with many global challenges, and without transforming our daily life and our action, we will not be able to see tangible outcomes, which is why local action will move the world. So please keep this in mind. The local governments in Korea are walking hand in hand with ICLEI, and I believe that we are very much aligned with what the mayors have in their minds. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Park. Thank you, dear Young-hee, for giving us a picture of the overall action that is ongoing in your country, in Korea. It is great to see what an example local and provincial governments in Korea are setting for the rest of the world. And perhaps I may come back to you after having spoken to the other panelists here for another question that I would like to deepen a little bit further from what you have said before. But let me first of all turn now to the Mayor of Goyan, Mr. Lee. Please, Mr. Lee, I would like to give you the floor for your introductory remarks, please.
So I'm very pleased to meet you all. My name is Lee Jae-jum. I'm the mayor of Goyang-si. So I'm very honored and pleased to join this Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change 2021. So this will be a precious opportunity to discuss the very important issue with my fellows, mayors and other leaders. But I also have some kind of the regret that we cannot meet in person today. So as a representative of the Korean local governments that has already launched this climate change response. So up to now, we have already implemented some of the policies to achieve this global goal. As you know well, the Paris Agreement is different from other global agreements. It has not set up the deadline, and it has just defined the global goal for asking many countries all over the world to set up their own goals and policies. So it has encouraged many governments around the world to pursue their own path. In response to these global initiatives, we have decided to identify the characteristics of Goyang City. So as of April 2021, we are a very big city with more than 1 million. And also the population of the city is growing right now. And then most of the lands are the commercial and the residential areas, and the 55% of the land is covered by green areas. In addition, 78 streams are flowing through this city, so we have larger percentage of the wetlands and streams. And then, the analysis of the greenhouse gas emission, the main polluters are the transportation and electricity, production. So this is a very typical trend in the emission of the GHG. And the private cars have been replaced, and then so we have to encourage more citizens to shift to the public transportation. So we have also analyzed the greenhouse gas emission by buildings. So we also take some actions to shift the construction sector's emission. So we have defined and established our greenhouse gas reduction plans. So by 2030, the Goyang City will reduce the emission by 32.8% from the forecast of 2030. Then it means that we will reduce greenhouse gas emission by 54,500 tons. And so to be in line with the spirit of the UN the Race to Zero campaign, so we launched our actions last year to become very responsible, the local government, in joining this global campaign. Then last year, we have we just stopped achieving the 40% of the goal for 2020. However, this year, we have taken more steps to achieve our local targets. So we not only focus on the greenhouse gas emission reduction, but we also are investing in the sources of the polluters. Globally, we have to limit the global temperature rise of below 1.5 degrees Celsius. In order to prevent this global crisis, then we have to take more active actions. So we have built more green areas. So we have renovated the streams, and then we have also built the lakes and the artificial streams. And then to protect the largest scale wetland in the Goyang City, we have taken very concrete steps to transform the city into a more eco-friendly city. However, I believe that there is a very big gap around the awareness of the global crisis between the private sectors and public sectors. So many people still believe that this is not an urgent issue. So they don't have clear ideas about what is happening in the global crisis. Therefore, so we set up any citizens coalition to join these local initiatives. We also have worked with the businesses in different sectors so that all of the stakeholders in the city will join this initiative. In the end, all cities and all governments have to define their own policies and their own countermeasures to tackle this climate crisis. So today's forum will be a very valuable event for all these stakeholders to discuss our insightful ideas. So in this context, I've also participated in different types of forums and different types of associations to discuss this idea. So that I've learned a lot from other cities, the other areas' practices. And also I've shared our own experience with the other cities. So this will help us to very rapidly shift to the carbon neutral city. The carbon neutral basic law has been enacted to be in line with this new enactment. Then so we will follow this step then to achieve the very ambitious greenhouse gas reduction goals by 2030. Then I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Your mic is off.
Sorry.
Can you please
Sorry,
unmute yourself?
Sorry, I start again. Thank you very much, Mayor Lee, for describing to us how you approach the climate emergency in your city. And I am extremely pleased to hear how you bring all the elements together in a holistic approach, working towards achieving an eco-friendly city. So, of which the climate issues are, of course, a very important part, but you connect this with the other elements of policy making in your city. And I think the holistic approach that you are taking, as well as the awareness raising towards your citizens, the private sector and the public sector, I think is very, very valid and is the way forward to bring everybody on board, as you said. Thank you very much, Mayor, for having described to us how you advance on the issues of climate change and sustainability in your city. Mayor Lee, I know that you may have to leave earlier. We would like, therefore, already to thank you very much for having been with us here today. But please stay with us as long as your calendar allows. Thank you very much, Mayor. I would now like to give the floor to Mayor Martins Sakis, the mayor of Riga in Latvia. It is a pleasure, Mr. Sakis, to have you with us here today. Please, I myself have been very involved in cooperation with the city of Riga over the last 20 years, and it is a pleasure for me to listen to you, to hear from you how in the city of Riga you are advancing climate policies and decision making to contribute to the implementation of the Paris Agreement, but also to achieve sustainability within your jurisdiction. Mayor Stakis, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, climate change is one of the most difficult challenges of our time. So thus, if I had to describe Riga's plans for energy and climate policy in one word, I would say ambitions. And currently, Latvia has very ambitious European Commission goals that we have to meet. We must create a low-emission zone in the city center by 2027 and dramatically reduce CAG emissions already by 2030. And there are many in Latvia and elsewhere who want to leave these climate ambition goals where they are now, on a paper. And I also could just ignore the goals that are set for us, since when we have to deliver on them, I might not be even a mayor anymore. But I want to do that, since my goal is to lead a city that I can be proud of. So Riga has taken decisive steps towards climate neutrality. A year ago, in October 2020, the new term of Riga City Council began to work. From the very first day, we declared the climate-smart urban development as our key strategic priority. So in the past, Riga has always been a city of car owners, always. Everything, the city was designed in a way to make it comfortable to own a car. But it's clear that with the global climate challenge, this is no longer possible. And we have ambitious plans for how we want to see Riga develop. We want to calm down traffic in a city and give a lot more space to cyclists and pedestrians. We want a livable city center and livable neighborhoods where cars drive calmly, people want to spend their free time, and new businesses want to open their doors. But you can't do everything at once. So the first year has been a year of pilots and experiments. We have run pilots with the new bike lines, walking priority streets, road safety measures, summer oasis and others. And making traffic calmer and safer, it personally matters to me. We should not lose any lives on the streets of town. And I know what tragedy it is to the families. On evening December 30, 2 years ago, I had taken my phone in my hands, call my whole family, the sisters, mom, relatives, and tell them that our beloved father and grandfather were no longer. And they were struck with another 2 people by a car in a city where the allowed speed is 50 kilometers per hour. So this is why I say no one has to die in town traffic and no one has to fear walking the streets. It's our common thing. So my administration immediately established a municipal climate neutrality commission in my city, a political coordination and decision-making body to supervise the achievement of climate and decarbonization goals. In the beginning of 2021, Riga joined the renewed Paris Climate Declaration, cities leading the way to climate neutrality. And our goal is to make Riga the first climate neutral city in the Baltic states. And even more, we want to be among the first 100 climate neutral cities in Europe. This is our way to facilitate better urban environment and highest quality of life for Riga city residents. And I must admit that it involves a lot of challenges. My city, Riga, being home to about a third of Latvia population and representing over 60% of Latvia economy, must take the leading role in this transition. At the municipal level, smart energy transition goes far beyond implementing single projects. Decarbonization, a city involves a complex strategic planning and requires a cross-sectoral cooperation. With this in mind, we are now in a concluding phase of the elaboration of our new energy and climate plan, an ambitious goal-oriented integrated policy framework for smart urban decarbonization. And to achieve the vision, Riga, a first climate neutral city, our first task is self-transformation. Therefore, first, we are making the climate neutral municipality, ensuring that our municipal institutions are as sustainable as possible with the least impact on the climate, and our municipal infrastructure is climate neutral and resilient to the risks caused by climate change. And to achieve the status of a climate neutral and resilient municipality, our current activities for now and for coming years are the following. Making all municipal buildings climate neutral, making them use renewable energy sources as a heat energy. Comprehensive energy renovation and multi-apartment residential housing. Decrease of energy consumption in municipal buildings. Decrease energy consumption in centralized district heating. Climate neutral municipal lighting and traffic light infrastructure using renewable energy. And 100% zero-emission municipal transport fleet, and many others. Moreover, our way towards a climate neutral and resilient municipality includes such priority tasks as a significant improvement in the field of waste management, gradual shift from private cars to more sustainable transport modes, ensuring sustainable of the city natural capital over forests, parks and water bodies, and shift to circular economy model in municipality and many other. So currently, our new energy climate plan is one of the most discussed energy and climate plans in Latvia. However, the climate issues in Latvia has never been at the forefront of election campaigns. That's why, when I said in my campaign that Riga should become the first climate neutral city in the Baltics, many laughed. They said, I want to get involved in rescuing the polar bears. But to everyone's surprise, most people realized climate neutrality is about clean air, a harmonious, quiet environment, lower bills for people in energy efficient homes, and stable future for our children and grandchildren. And if these efforts also help to save polar bears, I have no objection to that either. That is why I am proud of the first election campaign in Latvia, where victory was achieved by putting the climate at the forefront. And this only means that people around the world are waking up, and people are more than willing to change their habits and give their support to those who offer a long-term perspective during the guidance of our common future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Stakis, for describing how you advance on the on tackling the climate crisis. And let me just congratulate you. You have described it also in a very holistic way. I'm very, very pleased to hear the efforts you are undertaking to create low emission zones by 2027. Great to hear, obviously, that you are working towards, via your climate and energy plan, towards reducing drastically your greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And in particularly, I think it is very, very important to have your focus both on mobility transportation as well as on safe neighborhoods, lively neighborhoods, combined with neutral buildings and ultimately, of course, with energy, with clean energy production, etc. So I think the transition phase that you have started towards becoming the first climate neutral city and capital in the Baltic states, or among the Baltic states, it's very ambitious, but with the efforts that you have just described, I think you are in a very good way. And let me just say, in terms of the citizen support, yes, we hear this from many other fellow mayors that it is not necessarily a winning point if one is addressing climate change. But I think, and we have seen this also in the streets in Europe, but across the world, that in particular the younger generation are asking politicians, are asking leaders to step up and to give the perspective that they think is necessary for the future. And so I think with this, I would hope that the efforts that you are undertaking will be well received by the younger generation, but also the overall population in the city of Riga and across the country. Thank you very much, Mr. Stakis, for describing to us your policies in the city of Riga. Thank you very much. Let me now turn to Councillor Robert Koch from the city of Sydney. And Mr. Koch, you will also be presenting or speaking on behalf and with the Lord Mayor of the city of Sydney in Australia, Mr. Glover Moore. And we are delighted to hear from how Sydney is tackling the climate crisis and moving towards achieving more sustainability within your jurisdiction. Mr. Koch, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gino Van Begen. And it's a great honor to be here. And hello, everyone. Greetings from Sydney. I will have a share my screen, my presentation here with you. Firstly, I'd like to as I'm giving this presentation here in the city of Sydney, and as we usually do in our common practice, is to acknowledge the traditional custodians. So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of our land, and pay my respects to the elders. And I also acknowledge the people of the 200 nationalities who live in our wonderfully diverse and multicultural city. And we're very proud of that indeed. Our Lord Mayor sends greetings and wishes for this forum to be a tremendous success. It is an honor for me to be here to be able to represent our Lord Mayor and the City of Sydney in this forum. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Mayor O and the City of Seoul for their commitment to the cause of action on climate change. And I'm very proud also to be here as a honorary citizen of Seoul. And it is a tremendous opportunity as well for us to work together. And I'm very proud of what Seoul has achieved and Seoul is doing right now. Therefore, in a very real sense, it is cities around the world who have led the push for action. And of course, it is in cities that we can make a real difference. Cities working together can indeed change the world. The City of Sydney has been active for well over a decade in promoting the need for action and taking action ourselves. Strong leadership has paid off with our citizens, our land and building owners, our companies and institutions, all working for a greener and more sustainable future. 2007 we became the first government in Australia to become climate neutral. And since July 2021, all of the city's operations have been powered 100% renewable energy. This is saving our ratepayers $500,000 a year for the next decade. And importantly, it also means new jobs created in rural areas that have been hard hit by fires and drought. In 2008, in consultation with all sectors of our community, we developed our Sustainable Sydney 2030 strategy, which sets ambitious targets and a rigorous system of monitoring to ensure that we are meeting our targets on time. The result is that we are now on track to meet our 2030 target 9 years ahead of schedule. Our work has included installation of more than 6,000 solar panels across 40 city-owned buildings, refitting street and park lights with low-emission LEDs, reducing emissions by 2,000 tons, and also saves us $800,000 a year in power bills and maintenance costs. Water recycling used in 20 parks produced 80,000 liters of non-potable water each day, keeping our green spaces green throughout summer's heat. We also have an extensive program of planting street trees, creating green spaces whenever possible. We have earmarked $377 million over the next decade to plant at least 700 street trees each and every year to invest in green roofs and walls and to improve urban forests across our local government area. Our leadership and credibility in stating our targets and working steadily towards them has enabled us to form strong partnerships right across the city. One such example is our Better Building partnerships, forged with leading property owners across Sydney, sharing information, resources, and knowledge to help steadily reduce emissions from their office buildings. A partnership operates with the managers of numerous apartment buildings through a Smart Green Apartments program, reduce emissions and waste, and much to the delight of the owners also results in significant savings. But most recently, in 2018, we launched the Sustainable Destination Partnership, which brings hotels, entertainment, and venues into a similar program. And now our ambitions are even stretching beyond our own local government boundaries. And after 2 years' work with other local governments, business, and our communities, we launched the Resilient Sydney strategy to build long-term resilience right across the metropolis. These achievements have only been possible through strong partnerships across all sectors and by learning from other cities around the world through organizations like the C40 Resilient Cities. So once again, I thank Mayor O and the City of Seoul for giving us this opportunity, and I look forward to hearing from all the other cities here today and a successful event. And I believe there's also a video from our Lord Mayor, and I think we can play that now. Thank you very much. The video is with.
Can I ask our team in Seoul to play the video of Lord Mayor Moore, please? Sydney? Mr. Cock just introduced
Thank you, Gino. Mayor O and fellow mayors. Sydney is glad to join you for this important meeting. We have been working on our response to the challenges of climate change since the independent team that I lead was first elected in 2004. And we can now proudly say Sydney lives up to the vision that we put forward of a green, global and connected city. We lead Australia in our actions on climate change, and we are now seeing an increasing number of cities around the world equally committed to leading change. We achieve change through involving all sectors in discussions about what we hoped for our city. We established targets and we monitored our progress. We've also formed partnerships with building owners, with apartment owners and with other sectors to progress our vision. Some years ago we became Australia's first carbon neutral city. That was back in 2007, and we have achieved our emissions target ahead of time. We have created a network of cycleways. We've increased green parks and worked to conserve water and deliver green energy. Cooperation has been a key element in our success so far, and cooperation globally is necessary to deal with the enormous challenges facing us all. And so I commend Seoul and Mayor O and thank you for your commitment and the actions that you are taking to deal with climate change. I look forward to continuing to work with Seoul and other international cities represented here so that together we can produce real results. I thank my colleague, Councillor Robert Koch, the honorary citizen of Seoul, for speaking today on behalf of our city. We're really happy to join you in this valuable opportunity for Sydney to share what we have learned and to learn from your experiences. So I wish you every success and thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moore, Lord Mayor of the City of Sydney. And Councillor Koch, thank you very much as well for describing the policies that you have been taking. And obviously, it is absolutely a success story of how Sydney has already become the first climate neutral city. I'm very, very pleased as well to hear that you have been able to transition towards 100% renewable energy in all of your governmental operations. It is absolutely extraordinary, and I'm grateful for you also having explained to us the benefits or the co-benefits of actually transitioning to renewable energy in your own operations. It is great also to have heard and listened to you explaining the partnerships as well as the Lord Mayor has done in terms of the cooperation. The Sustainable Destinations Initiative sounds a wonderful initiative in that perspective. And thank you so much again for working relentlessly to create Sydney as a green, global and connected city. So thank you very much, Mr. Koch, as well for your explanations. Ladies and gentlemen, in the audience, I would just like to thank very, very much all of my panelists here at this particular session. I would just like to turn to each of you for a one last 1 minute sharing of your experiences. There was one question that came in from the audience, in particularly asking us if we should be setting particular priorities when we wish to engage in achieving sustainable cities, a sustainable city as the one that you have under your control or jurisdiction. So can I just ask my colleagues here in the panel to just in 1 minute to give your reflection as to whether you think it is necessary to set one particular priority as opposed to have perhaps more priorities, and if so, which one would that be from your jurisdiction? So may I perhaps start with Mayor Stakis from the city of Riga?
Sure. Thank you for this question. Well, if you ask the question to the people who wants to change, then I think more than 50% raise their hands. So if you ask who is ready to change the habits, then there's maybe less than 25. And if you ask who is ready to lead the changes, then maybe there's only 1%. And that's why we said, let's start with ourselves. Let's start with municipality. Let's show the example. And then it is much more easy to ask also to the people to do the changes. And I think my priority number one is to do all these changes, not to people, but with people. And this is, I think, one of the most difficult parts, because people think that I want to make the changes because I need them. And I have to explain that this is not for me, this is actually for you. And if I want to ask them to switch from cars to the bicycles, I have to build first the infrastructure. If I have to ask them to switch to the cleaner cars, of course, first I need to change the fleet of the city transport. And now we are purchasing the 39 new electro buses. and so on. So I think how to involve the people to be with us, not against us. This is, I think, the most number one priority we are working with now, and this really requires a lot of time, a lot of negotiations, and of course showing the examples. And I think this is one of the most important things. Not just ask something, but doing by showing your example in the first row.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stakis, Mayor of Riga. Councillor Koch, Sydney, please, what would you think after listening to the experiences that you have gone through already in Sydney? Is it important to have one particular priority set in mind, or would you go on a variety of priorities? Please, Mr. Koch.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Van Begin. I agree with Mayor of Riga, Mr. Martin Stakis, as well, that we have to work with the people to achieve this, and not tell them what to do, but to work with. That's why I think back in 2008, we did Sydney's largest ever community consultation to ask the people what they would like to see in Sydney by 2030. That's how we worked our Sustainable Sydney 2030 plan, and in that we have goals that we need to achieve, and this is a blueprint for a city that's environmentally, economically, socially, and culturally sustainable. So it is the cornerstone of everything that we do, and continuingly to be updated as new opportunities arise. So the one thing that I think is very important to us, and we have brought this target ahead. So this is our target for citywide net zero greenhouse emissions to 2035 from 24. So we want to achieve net zero by 2035. So which we believe can be achieved through further expansions of renewable energy, working with our partners to increase the efficiency of our buildings, managing our waste, supporting active transport choices, and switching to electric vehicles. So all these gel together, together with the efforts of the communities and the people of the city as well, to make our citywide net zero greenhouse gas emissions. So I think that is the one take I would like to put forth. And thank you, Mr. Van Begin.
Thank you very much, Councillor Koch. I turn then finally to my colleague Yong-hee Park. So, Ms. Park, dear Yong-hee, also to you, what would you think? Is it should we set one single priority, or should we combine a number or set a number of priorities, and perhaps in particularly from a Korean context? Please, Yong-hee.
예.
Yes.
질문이 굉장히 중요하기도
So you just touched upon a very important but very difficult point. So as I said during my presentation, the local governments in Korea aim to achieve net zero by 2050. They have committed to that goal. So from the perspective of ICLEI, I think of the priorities for the local governments. Then, of course, now we have the target, but who are we going to engage, and how are we going to achieve that net zero ambition? We don't have the specific details yet, which is why we need a transparent governance, and we need a framework to bring about a transparent governance in place to make sure that we know whom we are going to work with and how we are going to attain the goal. And all the different stakeholders need to take responsibility and fully engage in the road towards net zero by 2050.
Thank you very much, Ms. Park. Thank you very much, Yong-hee. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all the panelists of this particular session. Mrs. Yong-hee Park, Executive Director of ICLEI Korea, Mr. Lee Jae-jun, Mayor of Goyan, Mr. Martin Stakis, Mayor of Riga, Councillor Robert Koch and Lord Mayor of Sydney, Madam Clover-Moore, thank you very, very much for your participation, for your inputs and willingness to discuss with us so openly about the steps that you are taking in your respective jurisdictions. I would like also to thank Mayor O from the city of Seoul, as well as the UN champions and the British Deputy Ambassador for having participated here in this session with us. I would like to thank also the entire team of the city of Seoul, who has been working very hard definitely in the last days to organize this opening plenary of the Seoul Mayors Forum on Climate Change 2021 and continue to work for the next sessions in the next today and the next days to come. Thank you also to the interpreters who have enabled us to talk to one another, as well as all the technicians who have enabled us to talk from various places in the world at various time zones as well. So thank you very much for all of your support to make this happening today. I would just like to conclude this opening plenary with a special message from the ICLEI president to the audience of the Seoul Mayors Forum on Climate Change 2021. Mayor County of the city of Des Moines in the United States of America. Mayor County is a long-term, fifth-term mayor in the city of Des Moines in the US and is ICLEI president since April this year. And Mayor County has, or in his message, will address and resume or summarize the various outcomes of the Daring Cities 2021, a platform, a forum of 5 intensive days of discussions that we have had in the beginning of October, virtually as well, but which continues and which continues into the COP26, where we will deliver those outcomes. So I would just like to ask the team now to send us through the video message of Mayor County. Thank you all very, very much, and goodbye.
Tackling a challenge as widespread and multifaceted as the climate emergency requires significant changes of mindsets. We all need transparency, clarity, and greater preparedness on the scale and scope of these changes, and must build upon the experience of previous challenges. However, no city, town, or region is expected to tackle the climate emergency on their own. To ensure the essential transformational changes required, we must unite and collaborate. In my capacity as the president of ICLEI, which acts as the focal point of cities and regions in the UNFCCC climate process together with the City of Bonn and all my partners, I am committed to carry forward the outcome of Daring Cities 2021 beyond COP26 in Glasgow. The Daring Cities 2021 outcome consists of 2 main components. First, we now have best practices on climate emergency. I'm impressed by the diversity of efforts presented by all my fellow leaders that reflects the enormous reality of transformation. Daring Cities 2021 surfaced more than 25 cases of climate emergency responses by communities around the world. Based on these real-life experiences, we have developed the Daring Cities 2021 Call for Transformation, which defines our roadmap on how to advance and expand these experiences to thousands of cities and regions across the world. The Daring Cities, towns, and regions already responding to the climate emergency need support and action from fellow local and regional governments, from communities and stakeholders at large, and from national governments and international community. These are their demands. Towards fellow, local, and regional governments, first, we must declare climate emergency and mobilize resources and increase capacity to achieve climate commitments. Second, we must mobilize all hands on deck throughout your administration and among your community. Third, we must prepare our communities for the worst as the new normal. Towards communities and stakeholders at large, first, we encourage you to demand your local, regional, and national legislative bodies to declare a climate emergency. Second, we invite you to make ambitious changes within your own spheres of influence. Third, we welcome you to participate actively in the implementation and follow-up of climate emergency declaration. Towards national governments and the intergovernmental community, first, we urge them to declare and support nationwide climate emergency. Second, we urge them to embrace multi-level governance and implementation as the new normal. Third, we urge them to ensure finance reaches to sustainable urbanization. And finally, in order to ensure this massive transformation, we invite your fellow leaders and stakeholders to join the Daring Cities community to exchange, disseminate, and advocate the success of our bold, decisive action to tackle the climate emergency.
Thank you very much for your eloquent presentations and passionate panel discussions. Once again, we would like to extend our sincere gratitude to all of our excellent presenters and panelists, as well as our distinguished moderator, His Excellency Mr. Gino van Begin, Secretary General of ICLEI. Thank you so much. So that concludes the opening ceremony and the high-level plenary session of Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change 2021. And please note that tomorrow, October 27th, Day 2 of this forum will commence at 9 a.m. on the dot Korea Standard Time, and we're going to conduct 5 sessions under different themes all day long. So please make sure you join us again tomorrow. Once again, thank you very much for staying with us until the very end of our programs today. Have a great evening if you're here in Asia, and enjoy the rest of your day if you're joining us from Europe, Americas, Africa, and other parts of the world. Well, then we will see you again tomorrow at 9 a.m. on the dot Korea Standard Time. This is Pammy Kim. Have a good day. Thank you very much. 네, 마지막으로 실시간 퀴즈 이벤트 당첨자를 발표하고 있습니다.
Announcement to make with respect to the event.
you.